It was a deep night. Screams could be heard in the tower. An unfamiliar voice was telling that bastard to keep his cool. He had just started after all, so don't let him dare pass out. He was injected with the stimulant again. That's 461 seconds. He lasted a lot longer with this reagent today. Considering these results, it could be said that a talented experimental subject was a really good thing. Mogemirn Magic Tower. 461 seconds after the 70-second stimulation of the magic power circuit. It can already be said that the magic circle has been activated, and the immunization reaction has been suppressed. This is a good result. They also injected him with a stimulant that expands his memory. This magic tower is known as the strongest in the Empire, and that's where he's slowly dying. Why someone like him, whose gifted mind was recognized, ended up in this place? After that, the guy was forcibly activated with a stimulant, and the protagonist begged for them to stop it. The man didn't like how noisy he was being. He asked to report back as the experiment was completed. That man was the head of the tower. This is so unfair. Why on earth was he dying in the tower he had longed to be in? His blood filled the magic circle. He was taken by the hair, telling him to stay conscious. A man with blonde hair asked Verdun how he was feeling. He wasn't much of a mage, but he had managed to confess because people had praised his intelligence a bit. That's why his life force and knowledge were being extracted in a secret research lab. He wanted so badly to see Verdun do his usual clever thing, to see the damn smartass prove himself. It looked like he couldn't even pass out in his current state. His gaze was on something else, which made him ignore all those words. The man with blonde hair didn't realize what he was looking at so intently. Only then did he see that the experimental ants had escaped. The man demanded that they fix it. Couldn't this bunch of scum even handle it? Those cretins can't even do what Waller said. If you think about it, he's pretty much the same insect. He doesn't even have a gram of magic power to break the chains. That's why no one's missed him. Good for them. After all, thanks to this guy, they now have an S-rank experimental subject. The friend he entered the magic tower with was sponsored to study abroad. They even sympathized with Roellen for having such a friend. What was the reason why this was even happening in the first place? He had asked himself that question too many times. But at the last moment, a realization came to him. Why on earth was all this happening now? Verdun told them to be quiet. Waller asked what he was muttering. He shouted for the bastards to be quiet. Everything is happening because he is weak. It all started 15 years ago. He had no parents and grew up in an orphanage. His dream was to become an incredible mage. He ended up going to a magic tower to study magic. But no matter how hard he tried to become a mage, there was no way he could, in the restriction of development rank 1. At the age of 7, he took a test to see if he was compatible with magic. The results showed that he couldn't become a magician. He was simply untalented. It was a death blow to him. But the boy didn't give up. Becoming a magician was his ultimate dream. Therefore, Verdun secretly took the books left in the rooms while he was cleaning. He also internalized many books from the library of the magic tower. Even though there was no magic power, he definitely had no doubts about his intelligence. Several years passed like this. Finally, he became a researcher at the magic tower. They called him a genius there. But even genius is an understatement. How could an ordinary researcher even think of such a thing? This is recognized not only by the entire magic tower, but also by its head, Mr. Balrog. It was then that Verdun realized a truth he hadn't known. His mind is not just a talent, it is from the world of genius. He thanked Lucard for such words. He had yet to prove that thesis before his presentation. Well then there the man realized that he didn't show it to anyone else. Only to Lucard. Verdun confirmed that he only shared it with him. Lucard is the only close researcher who recognized the protagonist. He might have a chance to stay in the tower not as a servant, but as a scientist. He thought so until Lucard publicized the protagonist's work, passing it off as his own. Verdun found out too late and immediately went to the head of the tower. The boy asked to be believed. He had made the whole thing up, hadn't he? The work disappeared the day before the presentation, and afterward it was presented by Lucard on his own behalf. Does he really want to say that the author of the theory of multidimensional continuity is Verdun? The esteemed head of the Mogemirn Magic Tower, Balrog Bessius. He's not going to let this go. Verdun asked permission to explain everything from the beginning. But the head of the Magic Tower only replied that it was surprising. He hadn't realized that there was such talent among the ranks of ordinary explorers. If only he hadn't gone to the head of the tower that day. If only he had just run away, then out of the tower. Balrog had said to come to his lab in 2 days when the moon was gone. Would he even be able to live normally for the next 7 years? Thus, he was forcibly imprisoned in the tower head's laboratory. That miserable bastard is always resisting. So tomorrow, let him expect an increase in the intensity of the experiment. Verdun became a daytime worker and nighttime experiment subject. They said they would try to create a magic circle in him to confirm his own theory. That they would inject drugs into his veins and watch for reactions. That they would test the effectiveness of new herbs. And also told that his life would be dedicated to the magic tower. No one believed when he tried to reveal the truth. In response, the head of the tower began threatening to kill everyone he cared about. It's over. What could he even do in this situation? It was as if a memory from their childhood flashed before them. When Verdun was rushing to fetch Rowellin, this young laborer was told to hurry. He was in the service of the master magician. Rowellin offered Verdun to become great mages together. He must promise to do so. They fastened their promise on their little fingers. The boy wondered what would have happened if his development potential had been a little higher. Would things have turned out differently? He should recognize that it was already over. He heard that same sound again. It's the sound he hears every time he experiments. He doesn't even know if he has any strength left at all. Maybe it's easier to die, but he doesn't want to anyway. It's still early. Nothing's over yet, for revenge and survival. He must hold on, grit his teeth and endure, and then he will be reborn. He will no longer be trampled, and he will gain great power. He will surpass his abilities. Nothing is truly over. He must sharpen his blade for revenge for the past 7 years, with everything he has until it is sharpened. Verdun will not break and will solve this one single problem. In front of the face of the great power, it is not enough to simply be smarter than others. Since this is the case, he needs to defy fate. He will defy the limits of theory and complete the creation of a body remodeling method. The theory of confronting the heavens. He drew a huge magic circle. Tomorrow, this guy will surpass his capabilities. The long-awaited heaven confronting heaven theory that would allow one to reconstruct one's body. It was completed the moment he accepted death. Now all that's left is to prove it. This artifact can allow one-time magic to be used on someone who has none at all. It will develop in the process. Tomorrow night he will regain his freedom. The long-awaited night has passed. And finally the day came when he would carry out his plan. Waller walked in on him. Time to clean up the lab. He told this guy not to stand there. Go wipe up the blood and heal his cuts. I can't believe he cried after such a small experiment. What a lowlife. Waller's pissed off because this guy doesn't respond to him at all. It's like he can't hear him. Verdun replied that he would do it. He heard a familiar voice inquiring if he was cleaning up alone. It was Rowellin. Verdun wondered why on earth she was here. Rowellin had come here to say goodbye to her friend before she left. After all, she had told him that she would now be studying abroad in the magical city of Virent. Only the most distinguished talents of the Magic Tower could hope for such a special privilege. Guy congratulated her and also hoped that everything would go well. Rowellin replied that her offer still stood. She wanted him to go with her to Virent. There he would not have to deal with ignorant fools who despised him. He would be able to find new opportunities to learn magic. Rowellin tried to justify her suggestions by saying that she just wanted to talk to someone. However, Verdun wanted to stay here. This decision even made her upset. In any case, they will exchange letters. She doesn't know anything after all. Doesn't know what was going on here. Doesn't know what the protagonist has been exposed to all this time. And yet for one thing he was grateful to her. Rowellin would not interfere with his plan. Magic Festival. One of the most famous festivals in the world. It commemorates the construction of the first magical tower. It celebrates the rebirth of magic. It is the busiest day in the tower. When the festival begins, all high-ranking mages leave for the major cities. Only the low-ranking ones stay where they are. He came to another mage, who inquired as to what brought him here at this hour. If it was nothing important, then he would get for it. Verdun replied that the head of the tower had asked him to clean up the jewel vault. So he should have asked permission beforehand. Didn't the worthless goon even think of that? He did allow this guy to go to the vault after all. However, he would have a hard time if he dared to scratch or lose anything. As soon as he stepped inside, he activated the artifact that blocks sound. Now it was about to begin. He arrived at the place where there were as many as 3 magic seals. The second circle. Ancient artifacts, on the creation of which the head of the fable spent an astronomical amount of money. It allows the mage to use 3 spells and temporarily awakens the hidden talents of its wielder. To fulfill his plan, he needs this staff. And to take it, he must disable the protective magic circle. In front of him is a 7th level spell that the tower head cast personally. He has spent the last 7 years learning how to remove it. The tower head is very proud of this magic circle, and this is a spell he will break with his own strength. While everyone is enjoying the festival, They have to guard the source of the power. It can't be helped after all. They drew straws. Therefore, he has no patience. If it were a matter of skill, he would definitely be chosen. He noticed Verdun arriving, and it was rather timely because the man demanded to bring more drinks. When the man became head of the tower, he would not drink such cheap liquor again. His interlocutor asked if he really thought it would be that easy to become the head. If he becomes the head of the tower, he even decided to provide him with booze. He would remember those words, and he would definitely become the head of the tower. However, his wish was not destined to come true. In front of the young man's eyes, his interlocutor died. He immediately turned back and asked what the idiot was doing. In his opinion, Verdun had definitely lost his mind. This was the kind of reaction the protagonist didn't expect. How dare this pathetic rat try to harm a mage? He better get his brains fixed. He was using level 3 magic, tsunami magic. The protagonist also used the same level magic, an earth spear. There's no way he could resist that spell. This man had a pitiful first wound after all. How was he even able to use magic? He seemed surprised that the subject of the experiments was capable of such a thing. This is what happens when you flirt with people too much. That this man is the head of the tower. Here he's dealt with another mage. He used their fingerprints to enter the room they were guarding. This was actually the first time he was looking so close to the source of the magic tower's power. It had taken a full 7 years to reach this point. Now using the mana from the source, he will begin to confront the heavens. If Verdun fails, he doesn't even know what will become of him. But if he doesn't try, he definitely won't know. A magic seal appeared under his feet, after which he used this power to begin the reformation of his body. Confronting the heavens, a huge blue ray covered the magic tower. It could be seen even from afar. Of course, he also saw a huge energy surge from the source. That meant that no one had sneaked into his magic tower. Thanks to this spell, the magic tower was completely destroyed. Fortunately, the protagonist was alive. Verdun also noticed that the power was so destructive that it swept away an entire building. He even stayed alive after all, which meant that everything had worked out. After that, in the distance, he saw someone moving through the magic circles. It was the head of the magic tower. Hesitantly, the man sensed that something had happened to his men. He channeled his power to kill the protagonist, but only then did he notice that something had gone wrong. On the ground, he saw a magical teleportation circle. How dare he even touch the magic tower? It didn't care who it was. Even if it was the emperor himself or a small child. He would find this person and finish him off with his own hands. He was so sleepy. He couldn't even move. I wish he could stay like this much longer. Verdun heard the sound of water. He also tasted it. He immediately woke up, not realizing where he was. He had to run. Only then did he see his reflection. What had happened in the first place? His appearance had changed. Verdun didn't understand why he looked the way he did. The brown hair that had been with him since childhood had turned ashy, and the black pupils had lightened. The eyes were now pure blue. It was as if he had become a completely different person. Could it be that something happened during the body reconstruction? In any case, it seems that this magic worked. He had dealt with those people from the magic tower, dealt with the confrontation with the heavens, and before the head of the tower could find him, he quickly disappeared using teleportation magic. As a result, Verdun found himself here. Never before had he seen such a forest. There were no plants like this in the magic tower, which meant that he had teleported across half of an entire continent. In other words, he managed to transform his body and escape through the prearranged magic circle in time. Finally, he was free. He was even curious to know how this chapter of the fable felt. He was certain that the man was furious. Since the tower was destroyed, they would have to find the culprit and find out that their lab rat had escaped. But that's not enough to bring down the magic tower. Even though they have lost their staff, Verdun is still confident that the head will take countermeasures. Besides, Belrog Bessian was called the Almighty Man for a reason. But that's enough for now. The tower will be rebuilt, and in the meantime he will grow stronger to exact his revenge. Verdun will destroy everything he builds before his own eyes, and the protagonist's name will be preserved in history. Revenge and fulfillment as a mage, those are his goals. Looks like we can already say goodbye to the magic tower. Meanwhile, the monster was busy opening the box with his axe. At the same time, Verdun was using the wind cutter. Before the monster could do anything, it died in the same second. Didn't the guy feel any difference? There seemed to be a problem during the body reconstruction. Except for the color of the eyes and hair, the appearance was mostly unchanged. Even the mana volume was the same. So far, there was no way for him to know what had happened. It's not a good thing. Since there are goblins roaming around, the village must be far away. He also noticed cart tracks on the ground. Looks like someone was in a hurry and dropped their stuff here. In order to find out everything, He uses mana detection. He needs to find the owner of the crate. With this spell, he was able to sense a man who was chasing a horse while sitting in a cart. The man didn't realize how he had only gotten himself into this. That they had run into the remnants of the bandits, whose numbers seemed to have been recently reduced, was not a problem. His inability to negotiate and blabbering about having connections to Baron Pite, and the fact that all the mercenaries had scattered out of fear wasn't a problem either. Except what was that creepy smile on the orc's face then? It was a good thing he was busy attacking those bandits back then. If it wasn't for them, he would have been dead by now. He heard the roar of the monsters and thought they were after him after all. The man further drove the horses. The carriage hit a tree, causing it to flip over. Luckily he was all right, but his back was hurting. It was only then that he noticed the monsters had already reached him. There were a whole bunch of them. The man just couldn't believe that he was going to be finished off by the worthless monsters after all. They attacked him to kill him. And the man closed his eyes, for he realized that this was the end. At that moment, a wall of earth appeared around him. But the problem was that he forgot to leave an air hole for the man. All the monsters turned their attention to the man who had come. Anyway, Verdun thought he could handle these guys until he suffocated. This was his first real god, except for that goblin. It was also the perfect opportunity to try out his abilities. To do so, he used multi-fire arrows. The other monsters began to burn alive. The chief, however, ordered his brothers to attack this man. After this order, they immediately rushed to attack. He combined two spells, multi-fire arrows and whirlwind. Double spell, a fire wave of arrows. There was a huge explosion. And yet Verdun was surprised. Before, he wouldn't have been able to kill a single goblin. But now there seemed to be no one left alive. We have to free that man before he dies. Otherwise, the protagonist had just come all this way for nothing. However, there was another monster behind him. The guy clearly didn't expect another one to be alive. A little later, the man introduced himself. His name is Conrad. He would definitely never forget today. If it wasn't for this mage, he definitely wouldn't have picked everything from that mess alive either. So the Conrad asked how he should pay. Verdun simply said to watch the road or the carriage would tip over again. I almost forgot to ask. Conrad wanted to know if Verdun was in danger, or at least threatened by a horde of monsters, but apologized if this question was stupid. That guy talks too much. However, it was indeed a bit dangerous. But at that moment, the guy wasn't confused even if one monster survived. To kill it, the protagonist used a wind cutter. There was nothing to worry about. Verdun wanted to know if they often appeared in this area. He had heard that thieves usually avoided the place where monsters lived, but this was actually the first time Conrad had come across them here as well. This forest is under the control of Baron Pite. When he was a child, the two often exchanged letters, and he had been told that thievery had been exterminated in this territory. So he took the familiar road, not taking the expensive mercenaries with him. But his luck seemed to have deserted him today. Verdun thought the teleportation had failed, but apparently he had been transported to the right place since he was in Baron Pite's land. Even though he had erased all traces of his changed appearance, the magical tower of Mogemirn might be looking for him. The best option now is to hide his identity and become stronger. It seems the main character hasn't introduced himself yet. Now is not yet the time when he will use the name Verdun. So for now, he will call himself Asher. And he will use his real name when he meets the head of the tower, Baron Pite's estate. The Baron asked Conrad what had happened to him in the first place. He must have lost some weight. It seems like he just lost weight while running from the orcs. The Baron immediately apologized and asked if he was okay. Not only was he attacked by thieves, but monsters as well. Conrad asked not to worry, as it wasn't the Baron's fault. He immediately noticed the Ma who had helped Conrad. Baron will not stay aside, since the savior of his friend is right in front of him. So he escorted the protagonist to the manor. Asher thanked for the clothes, food, and lodging provided. The man hasn't introduced himself yet. He is the governor of these lands, Baron Pite Henrod. He already knew the name of this mage. Pite also asked if the food was to his liking. Asher replied that it was delicious. For saving Conrad, he had prepared 5 million elks, so he asked simply to tell him when to hand them over. It may seem like the Baron is in a hurry, but if this mage doesn't mind, he would like to hire him for the job. The pay would be decent. It takes money to accomplish goals. Also, he would be able to practice his magical abilities in battle. So Asher inquired about the job. A few days ago, they found the bodies of the hanged men in the southern forest. Investigation revealed that they were all residents of a neighboring farming town. That town they had found in ruins. Bandit. At first they weren't sure who the culprit was, but later they found out that it was the bandits who had tried their best. However, after searching the whole area, they couldn't find anything. It was as if all their traces had been erased by magic. It was quite possible that there was a magician among their people. It goes without saying that everything is suspicious. Asher asked when he planned to do the stalking. He plans to do it in 3 days. Baron Pite's knight said hello to him. He was also in charge of the mission. That moat knight's name is Enoch. That dark-haired one is called Harris. And the young Peric. Peric was pleased to meet Mr. Mage. Asher shook hands with the knight as well, and also gave his name. He thought it would be a good chance, but he didn't expect to have to chase the bandits. He would just assume it was the main character's payback to him for staying here. Asher asked you if the rest of the knights would be with them. Enoch tells you that they are adventurers. Apparently word of the recent organs had reached them, and they were all gathered here. Most likely payment for killing the Great One. There are even gold-rank adventurers here. Gold-rank adventurers are at the same level as ordinary knights. In other words, they are seasoned veterans who know how to use energy to enhance themselves and their weapons. Rumor has it that at this rank, they are able to kill monsters. To continue like this, they needed a protagonist, despite having 3 knights. Enoch asked to let them know if there was indeed a mage among the bandits. Asher wondered why they would need one. Usually second-ranked mages are as strong as knights. But it would be difficult if they started using ranged spells. The best thing, of course, would be if they didn't have to deal with a mage. It seems like they were really unlucky in this situation. He immediately realized the meaning of those words. There is a magic circle in front of them. He used a scattering spell. Everyone was immediately surprised when they saw that a magic circle had suddenly appeared. How could something like this even be in their territory? It seems that the spell that Asher had just cast was camouflage. So he told the knights to stay here and he would go to remove the rest. With one wave of his hand, he was able to remove the magic circle. Enoch just couldn't believe that this guy was able to destroy such a magic circle so easily. Who was he anyway? Explorers are members of a guild that takes orders from all over the continent. Whether it's exploring unknown territory or scaring away monsters that are bothering people. Death always follows the adventurers, but despite this, people admire them. Since with ability comes wealth and fame. However, when the adventurer becomes too strong, having survived many situations during which he found himself on the brink of death, he, consumed by desires and abandoning his honor, ceases to control himself and points his blade at other people. In the end, he becomes a simple brigand. The damage from Pite's attack hasn't been made up for, and now they're suddenly being attacked by orcs and goblins. That's not to mention the fact that provisions are quite scarce. What the hell are they doing? Stop just gawking, he ordered them to go hunting. These seem to be the very people. Harris asked Sir Enoch what they should do now. They waited for the knight's instructions. They had let their guard down, so they should attack right away. However, he was stopped by the protagonist. Asher accompanies them as the one who should fight against magic. But they haven't estimated the enemy's strength yet. If their magician has more circles than the protagonist, they might lose. However, these people can't be allowed to get away, and he realizes this himself. There is one option. After all the efforts he made to expand his working territory, the subordinates hired from the past villages were also killed. His interlocutor, on the other hand, couldn't stand this whining. It would be better to think about how they should be. Who would have thought that an org laughing like a buffoon would come in and nail all the subordinates? Varya never imagined something like that would happen when he was working as a researcher. If only he hadn't been caught killing another researcher for money. He even missed those days. Varya suggested to Wilhelm to attack another village. However, the lad refused, for the Baron was angered by the men hanging from the trees. Wilhelm mentioned that they were hiding thanks to concealment magic, but it was time to set off. They say there's a town called Martis nearby. They were talking about a plan to loot the next village when suddenly a fiery arrow flew near it. There was an explosion. They immediately guessed that it was an unusual explosion, but a magical one. It was now clear that they had been discovered. The barrier had been breached, and Wilchin felt the recoil. The mana barrier is a defense ability that is quickly applied, but it is easy to destroy as it is not strong durable. Destroying the barrier sends a kickback to the caster. Now their power is clear. Asher will take care of the mage as they agreed. This time the Baron sent men to kill them. He even hired the mage and the others. However, even that plan won't come to fruition. Varya will just send heads to the Baron in return. Enoch only laughed. How terrified he was. Let him try if he could do it. Meanwhile, the protagonist was busy conjuring earth spells. Vilshan was planning to escape, but this guy is chasing him. Luckily for that, he uses an earth wall. Only those with 3 circles or more can fly, and this guy only has 2 circles. Vilshan wondered how long he was going to stand there. He used multi-ice arrows to attack. Just decided to strike first. Since this guy is only 2 circles away, he'll kill him before he leaves. Asher used multi-fire arrows. The two spells collided. They destroyed each other, leaving the ground marked. Not bad for a man with 2 circles, but he picked the wrong opponent. If he came with a knight, Vileshan's position would be at a disadvantage. But with this one guy, he would be able to handle and escape. However, Asher had no plans to let him go. What confidence and ability to use complex attribute magic at such a young age. It had been a long time since he had met such a promising talent. This kid didn't seem to have thought that this was where his end would come. Vileshan used the 3rd circle magic, Falling Ice. He then cast this spell on the protagonist, so that he would finally die. But something happened that he never expected. This guy was able to stop the spell with his earth spears. After that, Asher squeezed his fist and the earth spears shattered the ice. How could a mage with 2 circles even use the 3rd circle earth spear spell? The protagonist replied to let him guess it himself. Not only did he use the 3rd circle spell, but he also has 4 attributes. Had this person deceived him from the very beginning to the very end? He paid with his life for his arrogance. For now, it is good that an usher has come here. He now knew how to fight against a mage. But all was not as good as it seemed. 2 days before the expedition, he had created an experimental medicine using ingredients brought from the Magic Tower. He had nicknamed it the Magic Chain Extender. Thinking back to the hellish days spent in the Magic Tower, he no longer had the desire to conduct experiments on humans again. However, thanks to that, he was able to gain the 3rd circle. It seems that this person is dead. One must bring proof of victory over the bandits for him to be believed, and he must be trustworthy. Suddenly, the dead mage's wand caught his attention. He decided to test it with an evaluation spell. It is a magical stone wand with a spell cast on it. It shortens the spell casting time and increases the effectiveness of those involving ice. This could really come in handy. Sir Peric came running over to Asher, wondering if he was all right. It's a good thing that the protagonist is okay, as the man was worried about him. Asara explained that it was stronger than he thought it would be, so it had to be messed with. Peric looked around, and judging by the devastation around him, he could tell that the fight had been difficult. Asher wondered if the bandits were already finished, though what remained to be taken care of was their leader. Sir Enoch is handling that now. He should be done by the time they arrive. The protagonist asked if he could ask a question. Peric, of course, didn't mind. What is to be done with the bandits' belongings? The Lord is allowed to take anything they set their eyes on if he doesn't need it himself. Baron Pitehope is really a good man. This wand to the protagonist will come in handy. Enoch praised Asher for doing a great job. If it wasn't for that mock, they would have been in big trouble. Asher replied that it had been a good experience for him too. Everyone in this case had done a good job. Thanks to these conversations, he realized that he had been killed by Vileshan. But that's impossible, isn't it? If it continues like this, they will be taken to the Lord and executed. And he can't die like that in the village after all. He still has so much more to see. There's no choice, so it's worth avoiding. With a single move, he was able to get rid of his warders. Without Vileshan's magic, they won't be dealt with, which means there's only one way out. He would kill the knight, steal his horse, and escape. Enoch managed to grab the man's wrist before he struck. After that, he grabbed the man by his clothes and threw him over. He didn't understand at all how this knight was able to swing his sword away. Enoch ordered him to be tied up, and so that he would not move. Meanwhile, the man asked how he dared to throw back his swords. Where was his knightly pride? Enoch laughed a little and asked what it was all about in the first place. Pride is entertainment for the living, and this bandit shouldn't even think about it. Enoch apologized for such an unseemly scene. If he had more time, he would have chopped his head off. He didn't usually fight like that. It actually impressed Asher. Asher also wondered why they were left alive. Enoch had heard that there were some familiar faces among them. Perhaps some are survivors of the attack on the farming town. They plan to bring them to the estate and find out who they are before deciding their fate. Harris orders them to prepare to return to the estate. They must lead the bandits behind them. The man saw his partner being razed, so he decided to run away, for he didn't want to die that way. Harris decided to deal with him himself. However, he was stopped by an usher. He sensed that something was wrong. They heard the voice of the very same escapee who was already screaming for help. It was only then that the man smelled the odor of blood. Most likely that man was already dead, and now something was coming at them that they would have to deal with. Harry immediately blocked that blow. It was actually the severed head of the very man who wanted to escape. The others began to panic as well, not realizing what the hell was even going on. There could be orcs out there. It is quite possible that this monster could not be defeated by the adventurers. It could not be called an orc. Moreover, he wasn't even alone. Asher sensed a dozen of them. Most likely this large orc is the leader of the other creatures. He looks like the one from last time. The corners of his mouth are long, making it look like he's smiling. And his height is even more striking. He towers over the other members of the species. This monster must be an advanced level monster. He ordered behind his subordinates to attack the humans in his native tongue. Enoch ordered everyone to quickly take up defensive oppositions. They should concentrate on the goblins first. They would worry about the orcs later. No sooner had he finished speaking than he immediately had to block the orc's weapon. Because of that powerful blow, the knight was thrown backwards. With a smile on his face, the orc was about to crush him with his huge foot. At that moment, he was prevented from doing so by Harris and Perrick. They landed punches on the orc's leg. Thanks to the orc losing his balance, Enoch was also able to counterattack. He began to slash the monster with his weapon sliding downwards. But it was noticeable that the monster wasn't going to give up that easily. For some reason, it could be heard that he was laughing. With his huge hand, he grabbed the little goblin. Right before people's eyes, it began to devour its own kind. It was a horrible and disgusting sight. Only one bone was left of the goblin he had eaten, which he spat out. Now it was as if it did not have the wounds that the knights had inflicted on it a little earlier. The boys guessed that he had healed by eating his kin. Enoch mentioned that it looked like they wouldn't be able to go home in peace. Now they were facing round 2. The orc threw his weapon at them. That sword was right in front of Harris's face, who managed to block it with his sword at the last second. However, he was unable to block this destructive force. His blade broke. At that moment, he was pierced through. Perrick immediately became worried as soon as he saw what happened to Harris. Enoch shouted for him to be more careful himself. When did that monster just have time? In any case, Perrick would just cut off his arm. However, he couldn't pierce through the scum's skin. The sword was just stuck in the muscle. And he couldn't even pull out his sword. And the monster was preparing to kill him. Asher, who was using earth spears, intervened in the battle. Asher shouted for Sir Perrick to move away quickly. Fortunately, Perrick was unharmed. But he didn't understand at all what to do now. After all, he couldn't even recover his sword. Asher thinks that his recovery speed and physical stamina increased after he ate the goblin. Perrick punched with full force to try and cut off his arm. He had never heard that orcs could be so strong. Could it be a special essence from the legends? Enoch, however, didn't think so. Even though they were so strong. Restoration and amplification through absorption. Controlling those below and provoking insanity. Strength comparable to that of a knight. He's clearly different from the average orc. If that's all, he's too weak to be called a special entity. Normal spells have a limit. Even if you put in more magic, the area of effect won't expand beyond a fixed area. And if the limit is overcome, the magic itself will fade away. That is the law of magic. However, there is a spell without a limit. Controlling the earth. The warriors could feel the ground shaking. First the monsters, and now the earthquake. They're all going to die here after all. Enoch shouted for them to stay calm and not leave their positions. It's usher magic. He may have said so. But how can one stay calm in such a situation? All the goblins fell down. A huge orc was also down, crushing his kin. Asher used the 3rd circle flame ball spell. With this spell, he could burn all of his enemies. Perrick was encouraged by how well they were burning. Enoch demanded that he keep his dignity. But after all, he was so pleased to watch them burn. The 3rd circle flame orb spell has no limit of expansion. However, there are no mages that use it as their primary spell. How much it requires was an incredible expenditure of mana that wasn't worth it considering the result. If he had enough mana, the power would be more powerful than the 3rd circle. But that was beyond his ability. However, he was still alive. He was recovering in the same way he did last time. Perrick asked what they should do now. Since he didn't want to burn, then let him drown. Asher used the wave. A huge wave came down on his opponents. Asher decided to jump to them. After which the guy used multi-ice arrows. Winter Storm. Now let it just freeze to death. Double spell. Arrows of bitter cold. All the goblins are frozen too, even if he can infinitely regenerate or feel no pain. In his frozen state, he can't move. The protagonist used an ice sphere. Thanks to that, the capture was completed. The magical city of Virent. The magic tower has closed. That was the news in the newspapers. Now the man had seen everything. They say he blew up all the power sources and towers. The old man with a mustache asked if he really believed it. Most of the mage died. The work of the tower itself stopped. The extent of the damage is too great that the only cause could be the source exploding. People say it is divine retribution, or that someone built the explosion. The mages were glad they had time to prove the theory they were investigating. Even wondered if letters had come from the tower while they were in practice. Someone must have planned to seal the magical tower of Mogemirn, since they wouldn't do that to her themselves. He had heard that there were secret experiments going on in her underground laboratory, and just what was the reason for the attack. Suddenly, a stranger grabbed his clothes, asking him to repeat his words again. It was Roelin. She was eager to know what had become of the magical tower of Mogemirn. They decided to celebrate the safe return of the squad. After completing the subjugation of the bandits, they returned to Baron Pite's territory. The Baron threw a banquet. They had done a great job. It's a miracle no one died. Only the Baron didn't realize where the usher was. And then they finally saw him. Asher asked if he was late. The man replied that he had arrived just in time. He offered to drink wine to start. The protagonist still thanked the defense for the invitation. The guy also did not expect that even ordinary soldiers would be invited to the banquet. After all, they had come forward to defend the territory. The Baron asked what status mattered in such a case. He also wanted to talk about the bandits they had defeated. The Baron thought that they were too strong for mere bandits. Asher also thought that they were nothing like the thugs he knew. With that level of skill, they could live comfortably doing something else. They really did. Perhaps this could clarify the situation. According to the investigation, these types possessed a gold rank among adventurers. But about a year or two ago, one of them killed his comrade and escaped. After that, their whereabouts became unknown. But apparently they formed a gang and ended up here. Gold rank was the fourth highest among adventurers, which could only be obtained after many achievements. No wonder there was a reward of 10 million elk for them. So that was why the Baron looked so satisfied. If Asher hadn't been involved, the sacrifices might have been more serious. He also noticed the Baron's looks, and didn't understand why he was looking at him like that. Asher didn't just eliminate the bandits, but he also dealt with the half-men instead of the fallen adventurers. The Eldar of the adventurers sent their thanks as well. Asher is now the pride of this territory. It seems this man has had too much to drink. He himself suspects that wine has a bad effect on him. In any case, they were able to rescue the bandits who were taken out of the village, and gave the victims a proper funeral. They decided to raise their glasses to the Asher mage who had saved the territory of Pate. The banquet that followed afterward was quite different in atmosphere from what he had seen in the Magic Tower. A banquet where everyone was partying together without regard to status. It was different in the Magic Tower. The warm and friendly attitude here touched Verdun deeply. For the first time since his escape from the tower, he was able to laugh heartily. All this time, no one had yet realized the changes that the destruction of Mogemirn would soon bring with it. She noticed that the tower was completely intact. Of course, the rumors were probably exaggerated. The man noticed the girl and recognized her as Lady Rovelin. He assumed she had just returned from Verent. She had heard that the power source had gotten out of control and destroyed the neighborhood. But things were looking better than expected. The buildings could be rebuilt quickly. She also wanted to know where Verdun was now. He pointed to a place where there were many people, indicating that he was there. There was a list of missing people. She just couldn't believe what she was seeing. This simply couldn't be true. Among their number, she saw a picture of Verdun. Missing person number 3 Verdun. Disappeared while on duty in the power room. Suspected to have been exposed to magical energy. No body found. She didn't understand how this could have happened. Her mind raced back to their last conversation, and how the boy had said he was going to stay here. Had that meeting been their last? Roelin didn't want to break up like that. He was like family to her, a dear friend. Suddenly, someone placed a hand on her head, telling her that she needed to calm down. Being angry at others wouldn't change anything. It was the Lord of the Ruined Tower. Roelin asked what exactly happened in the tower. During the festival, the power source failed. All the mages in the Corps, including the officer on duty, died. Not only that, years of accumulated data and research records were destroyed. Even the Treasury's magic circle was damaged, resulting in irreparable losses. Everything in the Treasury, the collection of books, spells, and artifacts, it's all gone. The damage was impossible to estimate. But there was also the most important loss. Experimental object number 77. If they recovered this guy's brain, they could recover the lost records and achievement. At the very least, they could get their revenge. Although they had missed the main culprit of the power surge, there was a clue. Roelin immediately asked what he meant. 3 hours before the power surge and someone disappeared without a trace. He used every connection to trace that person's whereabouts and background. And he found this. It was the symbol of the Dark Hour. The Dark Hour. A group they just secretly study magic and seek to subjugate the world with it. So what are they doing here? It was unknown how they had gotten into the tower and caused the energy surge. But it was clear that they had something to do with it. To appease those who died, he intends to create a team to destroy the Dark Hour. And a spot in the team had already been reserved for Roelin. And judging from her facial expression, you can tell that she has already made her decision. She even broke that symbol. A few days later, the guild explorers came to Baron Pite's territory. Firstly, they wanted to apologize to Sir Asher for the incident that happened. They assessed the threat of the orcs as high. Therefore, they had sent gold-ranked explorers, but the results were terrible. Asher replied that it was just an accident. The man thanked him for his understanding. He also handed over a certificate for the reward for this conquest, including the risk fee and the reward for delivering the body of a new type of orc. The total amount is 24 million elks. After taxes are deducted, half will remain. Perhaps he doesn't know this, but for independent individuals who aren't registered with the guild, a tax of half the fee is levied on all rewards. Even if they want to waive it, they cannot, for it is an imperial law. Violation can lead to charges of non-payment of tax or embezzlement, but there is one legal way to avoid the tax. These people want the usher to become adventurous. He was glad that the protagonist understood everything perfectly. The Explorers Guild has low tax rates for the highest ranks, and since the usher is a special case, he will start at the silver rank. If the protagonist becomes an adventurer, it will limit his future into action. But there is something more important than money at the moment, Asher agreed. More important than money is becoming stronger to get revenge. Despite living as a test subject in Mogemirn for 7 years, his essence remains that of a mage. The Adventurers Guild warehouse in the territory of Pite. A mage is always a seeker of mysteries and an explorer. That's why he brought the corpse of a defeated orc here for full-scale research. To think that they have an artifact that preserves the state of the one that is covered. That was to be expected from an Adventurers Guild, though. But he was about to vomit from that nasty odor. Still, the red pupils and reddish skin of this orc is not surprising. But the torn mouth and more powerful physique compared to other creatures are particularly notable. But these features are far from those seen in more advanced species, such as orc warriors or orc lords. His intelligence cannot be called exceptional either. It is most likely a mutation, not evolution. But such a conclusion still seems wrong. Even if this mutation, there is not enough evidence to explain his regeneration, and the incredible strength attainable solely through nutrition. Suddenly he saw the scar. Regeneration is the ability to return the body to its previous state. This orc had it strong enough to regenerate a burned body, and even torn flesh. But in doing so, it failed to deal with some wound, leaving a scar. If that was the case, the orc must have gotten its regenerative ability after being wounded. It's a cut mark. Only evolution could have helped the sexes to gain abilities after birth. If so, the most likely conclusion is that someone artificially created it. You're being very naughty. Asher replied that he shouldn't have come here to see him off. It's nothing after all. He did save their lives. So that's the minimum they can do for this guy. Asher already felt like he was getting too much. A ring of circulation and a beast skin robe. A slight increase in the amount of mana, as well as a slight increase in mana recovery speed. Enoch asked, relaxing. This is a well-deserved reward that belongs to Sir Asher. In that case, the protagonist would go. He wanted these guys to be safe. If Asher visits a branch of Conrad's trade guild in another city, he just has to mention his name. The protagonist definitely wouldn't regret it. A border village between the territory of Pite and Martes. He cancelled the flight. It turns out this is the only village between the two. If he stops here for the night and goes to the city tomorrow, it would be perfect. He heard the words of people who didn't expect it to turn out this way. Perhaps there might be some useful information here too. The protagonist decided to do a little eavesdropping and find out what was going on, and for that, he used the Whisper of the Wind. Anyway, the problem is with the tapestries. They stole all the cattle and paid a lot of money to hire adventurers. Although the people said they could handle it themselves, and someone might get hurt because of it. The village headman said that subduing the goblins is the adventurer's job. It will be finished by tomorrow morning, so there's no need to complain anymore. Their services are expensive. To ordinary people, these goblins are conditioned insects. They start out with small thefts, but when they are numerous, they attack villages, steal goods, and eat people. So when goblins are discovered, the standard reaction is to summon adventurers. This is probably not unusual. They also didn't know if those rumors about James seeing a monster in the forest were true. His interlocutor immediately said that the headman had forbidden them to talk about it. And the other person thought that no one was listening to them anyway. It was a few days ago. He went to check a trap he had set in the forest, but then he heard the screech of a wild cabin and turned around. And there was a goblin with a torn mouth bigger than an orc's, devouring a boar. They should be quieter, because if the adventurers heard, they would have to pay extra. With that, the protagonist cancelled his spell. He didn't expect to hear such a thing. A large goblin with a torn mouth. It's very hard to take this as an accident. Meanwhile, the adventurers dealt with another goblin, an adventurer with the silver rank of Myrna. The adventurer from silver rank Loke. Myrn thought she had gotten better. Loke asked if she was bragging about hitting a target that was under her nose. What a shame. Myrna asked if his nose was long in that case. She could shorten it. Two adventurers of silver rank, Iris and Mild. Iris asked if he had found any traces of goblins. There's a cave over there that looks like a goblin lair. A totem made of animal and human bones. It's a symbol of a superior species. Hobgoblins. If they're careful, they'll be fine. The first thing they must do before entering is to destroy all the warning devices and totems. Iris uses a piercing stare. Myrna has noticed that she can see clearly in the dark. Now, even without a flashlight, they are not afraid of the darkness. That's to be expected from a leader. She could be relied upon as always. In that case, it was time to go inside. Suddenly, she turned back, for she had sensed something. Myrna asked if something was wrong. Iris replied that it was nothing. In fact, she thought she felt mana. Perhaps it wasn't her imagination. The goblins worshipped the makeshift statue. At that moment, an arrow flew into it from afar. Loke and Mild chopped down two more. Everything is going smoothly. It looks like they won't be able to do it quickly this time. However, they still shouldn't let their guard down. They heard a sound that could have been made by a hobgoblin. Myrna decided to check it out. Iris told her to be careful. If anything happened, she should signal. As soon as she walked further, the girl suddenly heard a piercing scream. Loki walked over to her and inquired what had happened to her. Myrna heard something that sent a chill running down her spine. The rest of the group approached them, and they saw a huge hobgoblin in front of them. It was eating small goblins. The humans didn't understand what else it was at all. How can this giant leave its kin? Could it be some kind of mutant? However, no one said that they might encounter something like this. Right now, they need to focus on destroying it. The monster is huge, but if it's alone, they can definitely handle it. Iris said to have Myrna take care of its right eye. Loke and Mild should distract the creature. Iris will finish him off. Myrna jumped up and was right on top of it, preparing to fire. With a precise strike, she hit the eye. Loke shouted for Mild to raise his shield. After that, he snuck over to the huge goblin and taught him a lesson. However, it meant nothing to him, and he already wanted to kill the man. At that moment, Iris intervened with a burst of mana. There were explosions all over his body. He fell down with a stunned scream. He grabbed the goblin and threw it directly at the mage. The others yelled for Iris to run away, or at least duck. At that moment, another Emach intervened and engaged the air rail. Thanks to that, she was saved. Another arrow hit his eye, after which the goblin fell down. Myrna was worried about Iris and asked if she was all right and was not hurt. The girl replied that she was fine. If the goblin had hit her, she would have died. But the trajectory changed in flight. How was that even possible? In any case, they were able to complete the mission quietly and no one was hurt. Better hurry to the village to get their reward. It was a good thing that everyone was unharmed. It was not for nothing that he used invisibility and tracked. Thanks to this, the protagonist saw one of the laboratory's research objects. All the objects he'd encountered since escaping from the tower had one thing in common: a wide mouth that resembled a joke smile. Because of this, he had started calling all of these creatures Oshalomi. What goblin there is different from most. Unlike the others, he didn't have enhanced physical strength. And apparently it didn't regenerate or grow stronger by devouring its own kin. Maybe it was just a large goblin or a failed experiment. Still, this sorceress was pretty impressive. Iris suggested checking to see if any of the goblins were left, just in case. Myrna should keep an eye on the neighborhood. Loke and Mild should take other routes. She is good at sensing mana and leading the squad. This girl sensed the main character's mana before entering the cave. Thankfully, she couldn't track him down. Suddenly, he heard an unfamiliar voice. Who would have thought that someone would come here while he wasn't here? This person didn't look like an adventurer, so Iris wanted to find out who he was. If he came closer, she would use a spell. He apologized for introducing himself late. As it turns out, they are the guardians of this place. The very place they destroyed. He wasn't supposed to be very active, but he even built a totem and attracted attention. Apparently, brain manipulation wasn't enough to subdue his instincts. The man also asked if they had noticed anything odd about this tapestry. Perhaps some unusual behavior. Judging from their silence, he realized that the goblin was just big. If the professor found out about this, he would be very upset. So what was he going to do now? You can't take back what you've done. It's better to start with something he can fix. That means they all have to die here. Iris asked if he wants to fight them all alone. Of course he would. These guys are the reason the specimen died, and their experiment is limited. Even if that didn't happen, there's no guarantee that they wouldn't blab about what they saw and the grotto itself. But they could give their word that they wouldn't say anything. The man asked what guarantee there was that they would actually do so. There are none. Even if there were, he still wasn't going to let them go. To tell the truth, he just really wanted to hear them scream. The man with a creepy smile on his face asked who wanted to die first. He heard a voice saying that only himself would die here. But the man only laughed off this bravado. It was only then that he realized that the voice came from behind him. Who on earth could have said it? With a rumble, he revealed himself. He's the one who says things like, "I want to hear yelling and who wants to die." Thanks to that, he's the one trying to brag and seem cool. Or doesn't he read it that way himself? Verdun wasn't actually going to interfere. But if he hadn't, that man in black would have really killed them all. And he called that goblin the test subjects. And he mentioned someone behind the scenes he called a professor. No doubt it had something to do with the jesters. The man wondered who he was. The protagonist doesn't feel he has to answer that question. Even if he doesn't reveal his identity, it won't change the fact that the unknown man will die by his hand. Vaden used multiple flaming arrows. The man got so close to him that the protagonist had to activate his shield. His shield began to crack, and at that moment he used a mana ripple. His speed was astounding. Could it be that he had amplified himself with energy? The weight of his sword strike is lighter than a knight from Pite. However, his speed is much faster than those knights. At first, he thought he could finish him off with a single strike. Now he would have to change his strategy. The man also noticed that he was quick to use magic. It was unknown what rank he was, but in any case he thought to increase his speed too. Now they would see if the main character could handle it. Verdun used the Winter Wind, and an Ice Spade, a double spell. He just couldn't believe that this mage could use the elements of ice and wind at the same time. An explosion of ice peaks. Of course, it was impressive that he could use a dual spell with two elements. But if he misses, it's all meaningless. However, the protagonist managed to dodge his strike, and there was already a magic circle underneath him. How could an ordinary mage dodge his attack? Even Iris didn't understand how he managed to react at such speed. At that moment, he was using ignition. There was a huge explosion in the cave, and then rain appeared there. That magician provoked it to launch a counterattack. It's not a typical tactic for a mage. However, it's all he has, and the trick won't work like that twice. Verdun wondered if this meant that traps wouldn't work anymore either. Then he would fight like a real mage. The boys noticed the ground beneath them suddenly start to rise. How high they would end up. The spell has stopped. It's landscape manipulation. The spell is known for its inefficiency in using mana, but this guy is using it in real combat. Double spellcasting and rapid reading of large-scale spells. His mana reserve must be enormous. She had never even heard of this kind of fighting style before. This guy said that he would fight like a real mage after all, yet he just ran away. Does he really think that the man can't do anything since he's up there? One can understand why he moved up there, but why on earth did he raise all the adventurers? Despite the extraordinary mana consumption, he had noticed that the flames had melted the ice. Now, he had to understand the protagonist's plan. Iris noticed it as well. Verdun had decided to use lightning magic. Even among the academy professors, only a few could use this element. Third-level magic, Thunderbolt. For the umpteenth time, he wondered who this guy even was. Fire, ice, wind, and now a higher element, triple spell. There was an explosion. Then Verdun came down there to ask a question. There was an orc like the dead goblin giant in the Pite barony. It was reasonable to assume that they had something to do with this professor. Now he understood why it was so quiet there. What was clear was that the main character was behind it. The man wondered if he had come from the Ark. However, this was the first time Verdun had heard of the Ark. From the look on his face, he realized that this was the protagonist's first time hearing about it as well. It's okay if he doesn't know him. Let him just kill it. Before Verdun does that, he still has to answer the question. Where on earth can the guy find the professor? He's very interested in the experiments they're doing. It would be dangerous to let him get to the professor. Therefore, in order not to reveal this secret, he simply decided to die with him here together. However, the protagonist managed to put up a shield. That was his last response. After that, he used the expansion of the earth. And after all, he had hoped to find at least one thread leading to the appearance of the jesters. But in the end, his efforts were in vain. In any case, he didn't care about that now. He must finish what he had started. Verdun declared that they must all obey his orders now. As the protagonist ordered, they received an additional reward from the village elder. When she threatened to report the missed information about the mutant tapestry, he paid an additional 1.2 million elks that Iris kept silent. They were about to leave as their business was already completed here. However, the protagonist held out a bag of money to them and asked them to take this too. Iris didn't expect him to want to give them some of it at all. Verdun replied that it was their commission. The protagonist asked that they escort him from this village to the city of Martes. After the incident in the cave, he started moving towards Martes along with Iris's team. Along the way, team leader Iris asked him about magic. More specifically, she was asking about the theory of elements in magic. He didn't mind the conversation, so he entered into discussions with her. Before he knew it, time had flown by, and they had already arrived in Martes. A town this size would probably have a bank. Then, since they need to approach a few reports to the guild, the adventurers need to go this way. The leader will guide him through Martes. Iris asked the gentleman where he wanted to go first. Verdun replied that he would like to start by getting an award and opening a bank account. In that case, she suggested going to City Hall for starters. She knows this town like the back of her hand. The guys also noticed how calm Iris looked. After all, he was the one who didn't hesitate to kill the man they met in the cave. The first place the reward for caught criminals is given out is through the City Hall. He almost got in trouble because he didn't have time to create an identity card after changing his body. Of course, the guard wouldn't let him through until he confirmed his identity. Fortunately, thanks to Baron Pite's guarantee, he was allowed to enter, and upon learning that he had brought a letter of recommendation from the Baron, then he began to be treated differently. The man approached this kind man, saying that he had already received the message. He had heard that this mage had done something impressive. Before the man had left the barony of Pete, he had shown him generosity. Therefore, he asked to accept this as a token of gratitude for saving Pite. He said that his family lived in the barony's territory, and expressed his gratitude for defeating the bandits, and then unexpectedly presented an identity card. Thanks to this, the protagonist was able to open a bank account, so everything worked out well. He still has the account he used in Verent, but right now he can't use it. If he uses that account, the boss master will not be able to trace it, so one has to be very careful. He would like it to be in the form of a staff. Blacksmith. The man noted that it would require materials and a little time to make everything, so he said to come back in 3 days. For now, he could use it. Iris was surprised that he preferred staffs over wands. Verdun explained that he was just used to using them when he did a lot of broom work. Of course, she didn't understand what broomsticks had to do with it. This is Marta's public library. That's where those spell books should be. But perhaps they are not at a level that would satisfy this Mr. Magician. In fact, the basic ones would suit him just fine. Iris asked how many he wanted. He wanted all the books. The Great Hall of the public library. Of course, the librarian politely explained that they couldn't take that many. Verdun asked if he could credit the money to this account and have it delivered to the top floor of the Lorix Hotel. The man inquired how many books he wanted delivered. The answer was obvious. All the books. It was the biggest sale ever. He got his reward, opened a bank account, ordered a staff, and rented all the enchantment books. Iris was too tired for the day. She didn't understand who this man was at all. Iris took him to all the places he wanted to go. Verdun replied that that was enough for today. She remembered that she had never even once asked his name. Of course, he had given the name Asher. She could treat him as she pleased. In that case, she would speak to him informally. Iris asked if he would do the same. How quickly she had agreed to it. Now was her chance to ask what she really wanted to know. The girl apologized if she was getting in the wrong business, but she was curious to know why on earth he was in that cave. Verdun wondered, and what he should say to that. Perhaps he should tell her that he had accidentally saved them. It would be strange to say that he just happened to be there. Right now, he would have to come up with an excuse. In that case, he'd get to the point too. The guy explained that he was stalking that man. Now that she thought about it, he was really asking about the professor in the cave. Was he some kind of secret agent that he was stalking a shadowy organization? After all, he didn't get much out of it. There's more than enough for today, so she can go back. Since this was the protagonist's first time here, she decided to walk him home. Verdun replied that there was no need to walk that far, but he agreed nonetheless. Iris wished him a good night and said goodbye. Finally, they were able to call it a day. This guy is really a strange person. He has such a high level of magic that he can control all the elements. Such a volume of mana that even she can't measure. Oh, and even at such a young age, Asher has a theoretical understanding that academy professors don't have. And he explains it well himself. In addition to that, with such a handsome face, he should be very popular. But when she would start a conversation with him, the usher would get strangely tense. It's almost like talking to a scarecrow. Or maybe he just relies on his looks. Iris didn't understand at all why his face wouldn't get out of his head. But between all the mages she'd met since graduating from the academy and since starting work, he was by far the most talented. You don't meet someone that talented every day. Tomorrow she will ask this guy more about elemental magic. Suddenly, there was an explosion. As it turned out, the Lorix Hotel had exploded. Asher had said he was staying there after all. She also noticed that there was a silhouette of a person there. It was none other than an usher. The man said that Sergen was dead. The other asked who had killed him. There were traces of magic use in the cave, so someone else had killed him. After he said that, a vial of some kind of liquid was thrown at his head. He'd better not play dumb. He clearly asked who killed Sargent. They haven't identified the face of the killer yet, but they found evidence that someone took an order from the village. It's actually disappointing. Sergen was useful. It turns out the test subject is also dead. The remains of any trace of Sergen as well as the objects have been destroyed. The man with the glasses called him useless trash. He was supposed to take care of who killed Sergen after all. The 2 test facilities from the barony of Pete are silent. And now Goblin and Sergen are dead. The experiment is almost complete. Perhaps the Arc Freaks have already spotted them. The man had ordered him not to return until he had killed the man responsible for Sergen's death. The old, useless old man. He would find the killer no matter what it cost him. Now he knew the usual cat ear spell. So he's back. He'd been wandering around the city all day. The magic detector is really ineffective. He'd better get to bed soon. Once he's asleep, and this will be his last moment in life. But why did it get so quiet? The protagonist used an earth bone. He was discovered. The man didn't understand at all how he was discovered. And after that, he blew up the hotel. That asshole set off the explosion right away. He's not afraid to do that in a confined space. He's at least level 3. So the man decided to back off for now. But he decided to take the bait, shouting that Max had gone crazy and was going to blow up the city. He also shouted that he needed to run and alert the guards immediately. The assassin he didn't react to detecting the magic in the main character. But she is impatient and made a mistake. Since he completely concealed his presence, his existence became even more noticeable. Like a black hole on a white page. As soon as a punch flew near him, the man completely stopped realizing how on earth this guy was able to sense him. What the hell the Ark had sent in the first place? I mean, he'd never even heard of this monster before. He doesn't even care that there are civilians around. He just keeps on using the spell. This guy is just crazy. At the same time, Verdan was using a magic arrow. Through all these attacks, he entered a building to dodge it all. Out of all the buildings, he chose the one with the homeless gang. The other man, however, asked why he had to barge in like that and make a panic out of nothing. Verdun apologized and asked where that man had gone. What an impatient young man. If he wants information, he must pay for it. There's no other way out. That guy must still be inside. Suddenly, he noticed the piercing of the man who had just spoken to him. He had killed an innocent man and also stabbed him in the back. How despicable. The protagonist used a shockwave. However, the man managed to stop himself with his weapon. Normally, mages can't attack and defend at the same time. If that's the case, he'll just bait this guy by forcing him to use a magic barrier, after which he would detonate a smoke bomb and run away. After that, he attacked the guy as if demanding him to activate the magic barrier. But contrary to his expectations, Verdan used the Earth Code. He didn't expect the barrier to be used at all. He chose to focus the mana to skate on the limb of his staff. And this man doesn't even lose in melee combat either. Is he really fighting a battle mage? After the protagonist struck this man, he used an Earth Guest, and then activated the vortex. However, then he tensed up, for he realized that this assassin had escaped. A guard came into the building, telling this mage not to move. He's under arrest for arson, and also for threatening the locals and the city. It's time to summarize the report we just heard. They claim that Usher is behind the chaos that's going on in the city. Mayor Henry Dacre. However, the guard claimed that the mage Usher appears to be the victim in this situation. Someone tried to kill him when he returned, leading to a confrontation and rioting. This is also apparently related to a recent incident in which they tried to kill an adventurer, which is related to their guild. Therefore, Oscar asked to be entrusted with leading the investigation. The head of Martis's Adventurer Guild. If that is indeed the case, the mayor has an idea of what kind of impression the Usher will leave on this city. He also asked if the inn was heavily damaged, only the top floor where the Usher was staying, and one wanted slum criminal was killed. The person responsible for that is on the wanted list. In addition, they received a testimony from an adventurer who defended Asher. He claims that he encountered a mutant goblin and an armed assailant in a cave during a honey-gathering mission. But when they visited the scene, there was nothing there. No bodies, no monsters, or even signs of other creatures. Which means that, including the latest assassination attempt, there is an organized group targeting the adventurers. Does it really mean that there could be similar incidents happening again? That's why Oscar was trying to assign the Usher a bodyguard. Henry asked if there was a problem with that. Rumors had already spread around the city. that the usher was the one who organized the explosion and sowed panic. That's why both soldiers and adventurers are refusing to guard him. In that case, he will talk to his knights. Next day, City Hall. Still quickly managed to enchant the staff. Since the equipment is ready, he should immediately begin his pursuit. A man walked in who knew that Mr. Asher was sitting in front of him. This is Jason, the deputy captain of the Martes Knights. As long as there is a risk of the protagonist being attacked again, he will guard him. The knight wondered if he was the reason the whole town was on edge. The protagonist thought that the charges against him had been dropped. Jason also noticed that he looked young, and yet he has a level 3. The guy just wanted to ask if he could leave. Jason replied that only if he was accompanied by him. Since that was the case, there was nothing he could do. Jason asked what he had just said and where he was even going. Half a day later, Jason asked again where they were even going. Asher didn't understand what was wrong at all. He had said himself that the main character was free to go wherever he wanted only if he accompanied him. Jason noted that they hadn't sat down once since they left the town hall. He didn't even realize how far they had to go. The boy replied that they were already there. This was the very place he wanted to visit. Had they walked so much just to come here? Jackson asked why they were even here. There was an explosion. This guy's obviously crazy. He just blew up the house with magic. Asher replied that he was here to find someone. The killer who tried to finish him off yesterday. Jason asked if the killer was really here. Asher replied that he was. During the fight with him last night, the main character managed to touch him and cast a spell. He had recently acquired a spell that links his own mana to the target's mana. It's called Trace. The marking didn't go anywhere, so the attacker didn't notice it. The knight realized that this guy's strength was really impressive. That's when they spotted the underground passage. The trail leads there. Judging from the direction and scale, it connects to the outside of the city. Asher asked if he knew about the existence of this tunnel. Jason had no idea it even existed, though they know all the passageways in the city. But this was the first time he had heard of it. An unknown tunnel that wasn't marked on the map and leads outside of Martes. That means they have a huge security problem. We need to shut this place down immediately. Asher replied that it is more important now to find the one who blew up the hotel. In that case, they should call for reinforcements. But the guy was against that, because then the target would slip away. We have to go after him now. Does the guy think he can ignore him since he is a simple vice captain? That usher probably doesn't think he's human at all. All these mages really like to get their noses up their asses. It's really annoying. Meanwhile, the assassin who had lost too much time was walking down the aisle. After he escaped from the mage, he had to heal his wounds and to clean up his tracks, so he's stuck here, but for too long. If this keeps up, the professor's gonna try to kill him. Maybe he should just run away. But there's really no point. The professor has a way to get him. We can only hope the professor will be merciful. Who is it? Marta's most famous face. When the professor came to see if this guy was dead, he made a mess. Made such a spectacle that the mayor and the Adventurers Guild now know of their existence. What kind of assassin spreads word of his target throughout the neighborhood anyway? He'd be better off explaining what happened, clearly and concisely. He got his orders and immediately went to Martes to check out the Department of Transportation. Then he found out where the man lived and set up an ambush. But somehow that mage sensed him and used a powerful spell. He hid among the crowd and tried to escape, but the mage chased him all the way. He barely managed to get away from him by using a smoke bomb. Does the man really think the professor will believe he escaped solely because of the bullshit smoke bomb? The man thinks it was because his escape coincided with the arrival of the knights. Maybe that's why that mage retreated. The Cretan thinks the professor would believe that some crazy mage who used a spell in the city gave up simply because of the smoke and the appearance of a few soldiers. Suddenly, though, he realized something and ordered his armor to be taken off quickly and then burned. The man didn't understand what he meant. The professor shouted for the goon to quickly burn it. Only then did he see that there were still traces of mana on his armor. Could it be that the man had cast a tracking spell on him? They've been tracked. The professor would take the sample, and he should destroy everything and seal the entrance. But it was too late, so that's why the trace link disappeared. They were able to locate the mark. But unfortunately for them, they were too late. Body build and stance. I think this is the same guy who attacked him the other day. And if so, there must be another famous personality behind him, the professor. So it is that crazy magician. Ark sent a very strange guy this time. It's not the first time he's heard good things about Ark. He will first pound them and then ask them questions. For this purpose, he uses an earth spear. The man quickly cut it. The professor asked where the idiot was going. What are they going to do now? There is no choice, so they will have to continue with the plan. Whatever he does, but he has to buy time. However, this man is not going anywhere. He used a magic arrow. The man immediately destroyed those strikes. Too bad he can't go in there. A weak arrow can be blocked, but if he hits too hard, he'll kill that man and he won't learn anything. At that moment, Oscar intervenes in the fight. The knight will hold him back and he should go after that mage. The protagonist didn't even thank him for that and immediately rushed after the professor. Where on earth had he gone? Going far away, the professor definitely couldn't have gone far. He smelled a very unpleasant odor. Its rottenness and decomposition of the body. He didn't expect that goofball to be able to stop him, but the professor certainly didn't think he would be here so quickly. However, the professor was glad that he had come. He just really wanted to show the result of his labors. The professor asked how he felt about these creations. So these are the jesters he saw. And he's got a whole squad here. Sounds like this guy is mocking them called jesters. It's a new round of evolution. Although the specimens here are not the most successful, for they don't fully reflect the professor's ideals. But there's still enough to tear any intruder to shreds. Roughly speaking, he should appreciate the professor's work. Verdun didn't have time for that. He used Wave and Thunderbolt. A double spell, a Gram Wave. What a madman. He's obviously been tricked. He thought he was a simple level 3 mage, but now he's doing something crazy. This person should be at least level 4 and closer to the upper limit. He spent decades to complete his research, and now it could all disappear in a minute. This simply can't be happening. It was time to awaken his masterpiece. Verdun, wondering where that rat was crawling to. The professor didn't expect it to reach here at all. The species squad should have killed it. Anyway, he had bad news. He burned them all, didn't he? The professor must smell something fried. Those samples weren't perfect, but one mage can't just wipe out an entire squad. So he was definitely level 4. The protagonist wondered what that creature next to him was. It was the professor's child. He called this creature his opus magnum, the eater, the embodiment of his philosophy. It feeds on flesh to evolve. It's the future of humanity. The professor shouted that it was the perfect branch of humanity, and the protagonist hastened to cut off his wrist. And the protagonist rushed to cut off his wrist. He was literally seconds away. The professor pressed the button before he could cut his wrist off. Cannibalism, evolution, and the future. Verdun now realized what he was trying to do. The mad mage's mana had marinated the meat down to the bones, and now the professor's child would taste it. He even uttered the word gobble. Could this creature really speak? It shouted that it was hungry. And this man looks delicious, so he decided to eat him. This creature can amplify itself. Magicians spend years practicing such tricks, or they use powerful artifacts. He won't stop. He has enough skill to launch endless attacks into the main character's blind spots alone. With this level of skill, he is worthy of being called Opus Magnum. For any adventurer, this battle will clearly be breathtaking. The creature already wanted to destroy the cursed shield as well. However, the protagonist attacked him, causing the creature to crash into the wall. But such a devourer is still no match for him. He has one habit. For 7 years, he lived in Mogemirn as a research subject, so he had to suppress his rage all the time. And then, when he returned to his room after the experiments, used the accumulated emotions as a driving force to complete the theory of confronting the heavens. Perhaps that's why the more he felt, the more anger spewed out. Whereupon the feelings ceased to cloud the mind, and he began to think rationally. The professor's best work, the eater, as he called it himself. This thing's physical abilities are on a par with the orc jesters of Pyth, and it regenerates about the same. But the Devourer's flexibility and speed are far greater. However, that's the end of it. The Devourer was able to dodge this blow, but it didn't expect to be pierced by an earth spear. This idiot didn't even realize that it was a trap. After that, the guy activated the magic arrow. Any knight would basically be able to defeat him. The eater doesn't recognize even the simplest of feints. He just swings his fists, although he has a lot of strength. A beast in humanoid form. It is too weak to be called its greatest creation. The professor didn't understand how it was even possible. How Opus Magnum could lose. This creature absorbs the traits of its victim through absorption, and so continuously grows stronger. This creation is the man of the future, a neo-human, and yet he had fallen so ignominiously in this battle. But the professor convinced himself that this child had only just awakened. He was still hungry and couldn't use his full power yet. If he had another chance, he would have fed this jam with his severed hand to regain his strength. Then he would have killed the mage and escaped. Given the structure of the facility and the traces left behind, there should be records. So the protagonist asked where the records of the experiments were. After all, he said it was his child. Therefore, if the professor does not hand them over to him at work, this child will die right before his eyes. The professor agreed. He thought it was a great opportunity. Since this kid is also a mage, Then after seeing the records, he might let him live. The professor didn't mind him taking a look at these. They're the whole value of his brutal research. Verdun began leafing through this book. However, he doesn't think he will need it. The professor asked what he was allowing himself. From a biological point of view, these studies are of supreme value. Barring ethical violations, they could rival even the Magic Tower of Mogemirn. Well, he just so happens to have different views. Also, the plan described at the end of these journals could cost humanity a lot of money. The professor wondered if the bastard would just kill him and the neo-human. If the professor told him what the Ark was, he might reconsider. He'd better forget about it, though. Jason's already on his way here, so there's no time. If he wants to avoid complications, he'll have to end up here. It's time for him to disappear from this world already. The professor asked to be given another chance. He wasn't done yet, after all. But at that moment, the protagonist decided to burn him alive. Jason asked if Mr. Asher was okay. The guy replied that he was fine, and he saw that Jason didn't seem to be hurt either. He seemed to have dealt with the killer. Asher asked that they communicate informally. Jason gave him a hard punch in the side. If a vice captain like himself is in such a state, the other man would probably be hurt a lot worse. Judging by how much Jason had said, he just walked away. He had some kind of map in his hands. Judging by the topography, it was near Martes. Jason wondered what it was burning there. However, the protagonist was interested in the red marker. Suddenly, he felt a headache, as well as a loss of strength. As far as he knows, it's a symptom of mana depletion. Looks like he didn't keep track and spent too much. He'll think about it later. For now, he needs to get back. It's been a few days since the professor's defeat. Though peace seemed to have returned to the city after the Togo incident, the mayor was furious after confirming the professor's plans and the existence of the underground passage. As a result, the knights of the city were placed on alert. Troops conducted a full sweep of the city and stepped up defenses. The commanders announced that they would search for new passages and close the ones found. But this is no longer the protagonist's problem. His concern now is the injection of stimulants to expand mana circulation. Thanks to the injections affecting the body's capabilities, he has reduced the years it takes a mage to a few weeks. It was time to move on to the next stage. Verdun had reached the environment of the third rank in the elemental magic system. It turns out the professor is dead. He had already thought of dealing with the professor himself. Now the man wouldn't even annoy him. He also heard that the professor was killed by the mysterious Asher. He would have to meet that person in person. The training ground of the Knights of Martes. That was also where he did his training. A place marked under the professor's guidance. Coming to the point, it was an old, already abandoned research center, located in the forest on the border of Martes, and hidden by a massive tree afterward. There was a photo that could only be accessed after unlocking a mechanical device. Inside, other than rats and insects, no significant life forms were found. The only thing they found was the fang-shaped emblem mentioned in the professor's journal, and the skin of a Mahwat known for its high physical endurance. There was no information about a group called the Ark, or those involved in the cultivation of neo-humans. Others, however, they understood why this crazy mage was practicing techniques with the spear. His teacher must have been hitting him over the head with a stick. Nevertheless, a valuable Mahbat hide had fallen into his hands, and he managed to avert a disaster in the city. That's a pretty good result. Jason reported that the mayor was looking for Asher. Henry owed him a huge debt of gratitude. Thanks to the terrorist plan that Asher had uncovered, they were able to catch the remnants of the group that was hiding in the city. However, they were unable to get any meaningful information. All those caught were just crazies who were manipulated by that notorious scoundrel they call the professor. Henry also asked to understand the fact that he would have to retain Asher's significant contribution to the case. Despite the fact that he was significant, this is logical, for otherwise the citizens would panic. Reputation is important. The protagonist needs to build his own if he wants to earn money and gain experience. When he's recognized as the mage who saved the city, he'll probably get more opportunities, just like in Pite territory. However, there was a reason why he agreed to keep the incident a secret. They had come to the storage of rare items. These items were acquired directly by the city or by criminals, a repository of magical items. And Henry replied that he could take in any item. Whatever pleases his eye, let him take it. He would receive a far more valuable reward for his efforts than mere money. From a skillfully crafted mithril sword that is easy to fill with mana, to high-quality weapons and magical artifacts, he can choose what suits him best. There are many opportunities to earn fame, but the opportunity to obtain such rare magical artifacts are rare. The protagonist asked if they could be appraised. The mayor was surprised that this mage was able to understand the value of an artifact. This is impressive. Staff of Escape. Minor increase in spell speed. Very minor reduction in mana cost with earth magic. Overall, most of these aren't bad, but what he has now is even better. Magic Cloak. Minor resistance to physical attacks. Also like fire. Ring of Regeneration. Minor wound regeneration. Very minor health regeneration. All useful, but nothing worthwhile for him personally. Perhaps he should just sell the mithril sword and buy something else. He noticed an interesting ring. It doesn't respond to grades, so it's probably not a magical item. And Henry replied that there was no need to hurry, as he had plenty of time. Thus the whole day passed. Henry apologized, however it was already time to make a decision. The main character also changed for his slowness. The man thought that he would just pick something quickly, but he is very carefully examining everything. The guy would like to take this. The necklace has a defense, an automatic mana barrier. That's a pretty good choice. But wouldn't it require more mana than manually creating a barrier? Actually, that's not really a problem for him. Letting this guy go is just a bit harsh on his part. So Henry decided to also give him this ring he had been looking at recently. But after all, he did say that you can only take one item. So the protagonist was surprised that he was allowed to take both. After all, he is the hero of this city, so another trinket is nothing. In fact, Verdun planned to stay here for a while. He needs something very important. Henry replied that if there was anything he could help with, the guy should just say, "Viron territory mine." The man broke through the rocks with his pickaxe, and there he spotted a skull. The other moved to shout and asked why he was panicking. Apparently he had never dug up bones before. In fact, he thought there was something strange here. A normal pickaxe blow should have shattered this skull. It's like there's something wrong with it. Why is it intact? The other man, however, decided to plant this skull. He said to take his pickaxe and get back to work. They need to finish. However, the man's body was shaking. Something was behind his back. The others couldn't believe their own eyes either. At first, he thought there was nothing behind him, but only then did they notice the undead. The man only wanted to shout for everyone to get out of the mine, when suddenly he was killed. Just like the others. A rumor began to spread that undead had appeared in the mine in Viron territory, with the appearance of creatures that could not be killed. A state of emergency was declared in Viron. Evidence of survivors from the mines spread, and the entire territory was plunged into fear. Meanwhile, the tragic story of Viron began to spread from word of mouth, and a messenger from Viron arrived in Martis as well. Thus the news reached Verdun as well. Verdun asked if this was an example of a proper magic spell. Iris told him to try moving quickly with it. It took a whole month to learn it. It had been a month since the professor had been killed. All this time he had been learning magic from Iris. He had increased his strength, reaction speed, and senses. And after that he activated the barrier spell, and then he used mana concentration. Verdun had reached a level where he could use them in real combat. Iris couldn't believe it. The mage had defeated the orc with his bare hands in just 13 seconds. What this guy couldn't do. The lessons had clearly paid off, so the protagonist thanked her for it. Iris replied that it was just that he was amazing. He could probably learn all this stuff on his own. There were no books left, and he was stagnant. If it wasn't for Iris, he wouldn't have been able to learn spell magic. Normally, someone might think they were good if they could do it all by themselves. Despite having such skills, he is humble and good-looking. Is there such a marvelous person? Just perfect. He has all the advantages, so why is he not interested in romantic relationships at all? It was only then that she began to suspect he had such a problem. Verdun replied that he didn't have that problem. Iris was surprised, as if he had read her mind. It was just written all over her face. Iris began to argue that he had it all wrong. She was still saying that it was just a huge misunderstanding. At the gate, the head of Marta's Adventurer Guild was waiting for them. He had a request. Oscar, the head of the adventurers, introduced an investigation when Verdun was falsely accused. The reason such a person sought out the protagonist may be because hordes of undead have appeared in the mines near Viron territory bordering Martes. The numbers are so huge that help is needed. Rumor has it that contact with the undead causes curses and disease. Because of this, no adventurer agreed. Then Oscar learned that the protagonist sorted everything out with the professor and came to him. In general, he did not really want to get involved in this case, but he ran out of money. In addition, he wanted to take this opportunity to improve his reputation, so he agreed. Everyone was talking about this atypical magician. They say that he's been practicing close combat with a staff or spear lately. Not only does he look good, but he's in good shape. Asher replied that he had heard strange rumors, so he wanted to know if she knew about them. Iris replied that she didn't. However, in fact, she already knew. In any case, he didn't expect her group to go as well. Isn't Iris not afraid of the undead? Of course she's not afraid of her. Silly rumors about curses don't affect academy graduates like her. Besides, they'll be supporting on the back line instead of the front line. It's a great opportunity to get an achievement without actually fighting. She better not sound like she's proud of it. In other words, it means they're not part of the battle group. The protagonist also hopes that it's a really good opportunity, like she said. 1 day has passed since the expedition was sent. He has been using the flight non-stop since yesterday. They were worried that his mom wasn't okay. But this guy seems to be keeping his distance from them. The girl with blue hair asked Iris what their relationship was like. They seem close enough. You could say they're like older and younger comrades. During the last mission, her group got into a bind. Then an usher suddenly appeared and rescued them. After that, they became close. Suddenly he felt something. The girl thought that they were both graduates of the same academy. However, Iris replied that your worker resembled your mentor. But the age difference between them was small. Her interlocutor didn't really understand all that much. The main character jumped to them, talking about the undead horde spotted ahead. They seemed to be chasing the inhabitants of Viron territory. He decided to go forward to help them. It's still far enough away from the collision zone, but there are a lot of them. This is the perfect chance. He had dedicated a whole month to spell magic in this. It was time to see the results. Among the treasures he stole from the Tower of Magic was a grimoire. It could only be used by mages of the 3rd level and above. But simply opening this book enhances the caster's magical power. It is a rare item that all mages wish to obtain. Only a Magic Tower master can create it. It requires expensive materials, which is why only a limited number of grimoires are made. Most of them are already in use, making them ineffective. The one he brought is an unregistered elemental grimoire. The protagonist has engraved in it a complex, permanently bound magic circle called the Bond. And now came the first real test after completing the bond with this grimoire. Geographic manipulation, the perfect chance to test its power. He raised his hand upward, and an earthy hand appeared there as well. An airway, flame, a double spell, an explosion. All the undead were on fire. He'd been using flight since yesterday, and he still had enough energy to use spells like this. The spell he wrote down in the grimoire was an earth element spell. Maybe it was the result of a combination of the immense mana of his altered body using superiority over the sky. And the grimoire enhanced geographical manipulation. It wasn't all for nothing. Iris noticed that he already exceeded level 4. This was clearly not the skill of a level 3 mage. Suddenly an undead appeared behind her. With a single swing of his weapon, the undead was defeated by a man. The man was angry, not realizing where all his loot had gone. A huge warrior of platinum armor and wielding an axe. This just couldn't be happening. Why didn't anyone say anything? He asked where all his loot was. It's the butcher Galliarch in front of them. Why is this man here? If he's referring to the undead, they've all fallen to their deaths. But there were dozens of them. When they were far from here, there was a report of a horde of undead. There must have been quite a few, but she said they were all destroyed. Could he have done all this? He walked over and called him a gray-haired man, asking if it was his doing. Asher replied that he did indeed do it. What's the big deal? It's very rude to answer like that. I mean, he came here because he was hired to hunt these undead. They were his prey, and this guy just stole his job. This magician got in his way, so he'd better get paid.